Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We are back on the dev server and it's time to have a look at another destroyer which is coming in for the French. This is the Milan and once again named very similarly to a plane that we already have in the game. The Milan ship is very similar to the Vautour, unlike the plane. It's part of the EVGA class. It's a D, where the Vautour is classed as a C, which is the same as the premium one, which is the pre-order vehicle. The major difference between them is actually the secondary armaments. So pretty much everything else is the same. The Milan has 3 less crew, weirdly enough, but I don't think that's really enough to make a difference. And also their main armament is still the same. So the Milan has 2 138.6mm guns here, 1 in the center, and then also 2 on the back. There are 4 single 37mm on this machine, and also a dual 37mm as well. So that's where it differs from the Vautour, which has this weird mix of tons of different guns. The unification has happened on the Milan, and it gets these 37s. Now, are these 37s any good? Doesn't look like it, so the Milan might actually be worse than the Vautour, at least with dealing with aircraft. It might be better against smaller ships, but usually these vehicles don't really face smaller ships, so that's really not going to work out in its favor. The other thing is it gets, instead of standard 6 torpedoes in the form of like 2 sets of triples, for some reason the Milan now actually has a triple set here and then 2 double sets ahead. So it's nice to have, I suppose, 1 extra torpedo, but also now the way that these torpedoes are going to work is it means that you're going to have to waste some in Naval Arcade to be able to reload them, because you won't be able to fire them all the same way. So even though this looks like you have 1 more torpedo, you technically actually have 1 less torpedo because you can't broadside all of them at the same time. So unless you have vehicles on both sides of you, you are losing out on this trade. It still has the 4 smoke funnels, which makes it distinguishable compared to a lot of other machines, and also exactly the same 1927 138s. So even though this vehicle is from 1942 and the Vautour is from 1931, that part of the machine did not get upgraded compared to some of the other ones. Has the engines and transmissions in the center, and also has the good old ready-use ammo for the guns, which is quite nice. It also seems like the ammo storage on the back at least is slightly bigger, which makes sense since it's powering 3 guns instead of 2. But a lot of the other parts of this machine are very similar in regards to it compared to the Vautour. So you have the anti-fragmentation armor, and then also the 50mm, which house the gun breech. Then, for modifications, incredibly similar to what we've seen before. The only difference is this one can actually bring mines. So you can bring French mines if you want. They line up on the back, so you just drop them off the back like a lot of other destroyers that turn up. So that's one of the unique things for this machine compared to others. I know a lot of people don't see the use in mines, and for me, the big thing about mines is they are a mechanic, it's a win more mechanic. That's generally the problem I have. So if you've already capped a zone and you want to try and hold off the enemy from taking it, you can put a bunch of mines around it, so it's harder for the enemy to get into the zone. But in order to put the mines there, you need to have already won the initial battle and also been put in a position where, you know, you have the advantage. So it's a win more mechanic, which usually you don't want to focus on win more mechanics. It's usually better to have mechanics which will get you that win in the first place, so then you can build from it on top of it. So even though these are nice on a destroyer, they're not going to be that useful, and more just kind of decoration compared to everything else. The 138s have a HE shell, which has a TN2 equivalent of 3.41 kilos, which is really nice, and also an SAP BC shell, which gives it more penetration and also doesn't lose too much TN2 equivalent on it, meaning that it still can be useful going forward, especially against machines that have a bit of armor, maybe not a ton, but enough to cause a bit of a problem. So this would be like light cruisers, or what some of them would be classed as like heavy destroyers. You know, some of the Italian ones, for example, and also Japanese ones, which don't have a ton of armor on them, but also have the characteristics of a standard cruiser. So at least you have those. The 37mm guns have 3mm of pen and also have a 50-gram explosive mass. I'm not really expecting these guns to do anything. Generally, when I look at them, they look pretty rough. And I'll kind of show you when we go into the test drive just why I personally believe they're rough. They just don't ever look like they're doing much because of the fire rate that's on top of them. So the mines are a nice touch. You know, you can always put them down, which is good, and the animation of them is always nice. There's a lot of destroyers which already have this feature and hardly ever used, but yeah, at least it's there. This is the fire rate that's on the guns. It's definitely a problem. It's not exactly the best. I don't know whether the guns are bugged or if this is really just the fire rate of the 37mm, but we're really not looking at something which is just insanely strong in that regard. And then once again with the torpedoes, if you fire off the torpedoes that are ready, you're then left with two, so you have to fire them off for the reload. And these French torpedoes are not exactly the fastest when you're turning the torpedo tubes. So the French vehicles overall, they seem to have some pretty nice guns on them, but also targeting speed just seems like it's completely out of the window compared to others. And we are still trying to shoot down the plane with these 37s, just to kind of show you the issue with this slow fire rate and all of that stuff going on. It's generally not going very well, and that's going to be a problem going forward. The guns, though, should be pretty good. You know, packing a decent amount of damage and just generally doing, you know, good hits to stuff, taking out ammo racks and also taking out other parts of destroyers and also cruisers. That is your saving grace when looking at these vehicles. Which, you know, the saving grace being the simple fact that the guns are just going to hit like a train, which is something that everybody wants in naval, because if you can destroy your opponent or take out their guns before you start getting railed on, you give yourself a very good advantage. And with the accuracy and also damage these guns put out, these naval engagements really shouldn't take too long. You can see how effective the 37s are as well. It took that long to be able to kill the SA-38, or sorry, the S-38. A nuts time to be alive. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Cupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R., and Lafouche for supporting the channel.